Well, thank you. And hello, everybody. Good morning if you are joining us from the US. And I don't know if they're in the audience, we will have later on in the recorded version, we might have some audience from outside the US. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. This is a webinar that we have prepared for you on how to submit a successful symposium proposal. And this is, as you remember, this is for the entomological meeting, which this year is going to be held in Denver, Colorado. So please go ahead and move to the next slide. I wanted to take this opportunity to also introduce this year's meeting program co-chairs. I have the honor of working this year with Lorianne Garcia. She's located in Austin College. And then with Chris Gedden from the USDA ARS, and myself, Boris Castro from Corteva Agri-Sciences. The three of us are your meeting program co-chairs for the 2021 meeting. And we also will be the three presenters today. So next, I'm gonna talk about the agenda. First of all, I think it is important for all of us to understand the different types of symposia category in order to also frame your symposium submission within those categories. I'm gonna be the one explaining those. Then Lorianne will review some of the key attributes that will help you develop a strong submission. Chris is gonna continue with some important considerations. And then, as Becky mentioned, we will have time for questions and hopefully also an open discussion on some ideas that you might have. Go ahead, Becky. So the first one, the first category of symposia is the program symposia. And at this point, I wanted to direct you to the last of these bullet points. The submission deadline was February 1st. However, I think it is important that we understand what a program symposia is, because some of you might actually submit program symposia in upcoming years, and it is good to know what makes a program symposia. But also, when you are writing your symposia, if you have not submitted one right now, obviously you missed that deadline, but you might realize that, gee, I mean, you could have easily submitted that for a program symposia. So it's important to understand, what you're submitting, and by the same token, some of the program symposia submission that we already received definitely make a strong section symposia. So a program symposia is the ESA top tier symposia, and this is very broad in scope. It reflects the themes of our meeting, which it's adapt, advance, and transform. You can see those at the bottom of each slide here. Also, it contains a feature of speakers from a variety of different backgrounds that reflect the diversity of the ESA membership. And by diversity, I mean gender diversity, geographical diversity, diversity in the levels of their career. Some of them might be early career professionals, some of them might be retirees. It could be also non-members. Some of these program symposia, they include some non-members. They might include some reporters, some policymakers, some laureates from other disciplines. So it really reflects a big variety. And as I said, is broad in scope. Very highly competitive submissions. Approximately 10% of all symposia submissions are accepted as program symposia. That kind of gives you an idea that it is highly competitive, in addition to having an earlier deadline. Those submissions that were not accepted as program symposia then will be automatically considered to be a section or a member symposia. They still have to be meeting some quality in the submission. And also, they received the highest level of consideration for the program enhancement funds. And Lorianne will be discussing that in more detail later. The next one is the section symposia. And many of you probably will be considering submitting a section symposia. This category serves the interest of the section. I mean, and you recall the ESA section, it can be MOVE, PBT, CCB, or the PIE. You need to understand the criteria and the objectives set forth by each one of those sections to make it strong. About 50% of the submissions are considered for section symposium. And those that doesn't get accepted to become a section symposium, it's not a reflection that it is not a good submission, it's just the scope of it is different, and we'll discuss it later. They receive the secondary priority for the program enhancement funds, and the deadline is March 1st. So you still have some time to prepare a very successful submission on the section symposia. And the third category is the member symposia. Again, as I mentioned, those that have not been accepted as a program symposia, section symposia, will be considered to be a member symposia. That doesn't reflect anything bad about it. It's just that we evaluate the latitude of the content. You know, all the organizers will be reading this and selecting them based on whether or not it has a focus that goes along a section, or if it is a more narrow focus, in this case of member symposia, a narrow focus that serves the interest of some members of the ESA. Some of them are quite good, actually, but these submissions still need to be well crafted. So remember, the member symposia can be narrow. It's just that it can be on any topic you choose, as long as it has interest among several member groups, not necessarily among a section or obviously a program. About 67% of the submissions, or whatever remaining space we have in each year's session, will be considered for member symposia. That doesn't mean that we will accept all of them. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, it has to be well crafted to be still accepted. And these member symposia are the ones that receive the lowest level of priority as far as the program enhancement funds. And the deadline also is similar to the deadline for the section symposia. The deadline for member symposia is March 1st. Okay, and now I will pass this to Lorianne.
Hi everyone, I'm Lorianne. Before I move into what makes a strong proposal, we wanted to give you some brief information about the program enhancement funds. So these funds are intended to be an incentive to help attract speakers for the annual meeting. However, they are, as an honoraria, they typically do not meet total expenses for traveling to the meeting for the recipient. There are restrictions on their use, and so we definitely encourage you to go to the website associated with the program enhancement funds to look at a more detailed outline. But we, the program chairs, are also responsible for reviewing the request for program enhancement funds, and there'll be some updates for the guidelines by March 1st. The due date, Becky, correct me if I'm wrong, the due date for the program enhancement fund request is different than the due dates for the symposium submissions.
That is correct.
Yes. All right, so back to actual symposium proposal submissions. There's going to be three main parts. First, you will have a summary statement of your goal, concepts, and objectives. Good symposium proposals do flesh this out in some depth. Typical responses are about a paragraph long. We also asked for a list of potential speakers, and including the topics that each speaker is intended to address. And if you have titles for the talk, you're welcome to submit those. And one of the things that will be surveyed is the diversity of the speakers. And as Boris was saying, diversity of speakers can be of any number of categories, including career level, geographic location, gender, ethnicity, etc., and other groups. And so we do actually have a new portion of the proposal submission form where you explain the steps to source diverse speakers. So on the screen is an example of a strong summary statement. You know, of course, we're not really expecting you to sit here and read the whole thing at this moment, but you can see it is a strong paragraph, but also it's not like a 10-page essay. So you always, you know, I always tell my students there's a line. But there are things that are achieved with this amount of space. Again, we want a direct statement about the topic being addressed. You should let us know about the scope of the topic, like what group of members would be interested, the relevance of the topic, especially if it relates directly to the conference's theme, overall goal and objectives, target audience, and plans for audience engagement. The speaker list, the more robust it is, the better. So if you could give us this demographic information on your speakers, that would be useful. We have name, career level, area of expertise, and then in addition, the topic they'll address or the title of their presentation. And then also we ask that you let us know whether or not the participation is confirmed or if you're waiting on a response. Now it's off to Chris.
So just to cover some considerations, as we've talked about, you know, there are program enhancement funds to support symposia. Now, 80% of those. I'm sorry, Becky. I'm struggling with the numbers today. I don't know why. Anyway, sure. Most of the programs, a large portion of the program of the PEF go to the program symposia, a smaller amount to section, and a smaller still amount to the member. So the highest level symposia get more of the PEF. Another thing that's not on this slide is that as the program is being built and the rooms are assigned and the times are chosen to plug in these various types of symposia, there's a similar kind of a hierarchy. Program symposia are going to get the bigger rooms and the most desirable time slots, and so the member symposia are at the lower end of that spectrum, and so section symposia have a better chance of getting a big room and a good time. But there's still plenty of rooms and times to go around. It's just that there is a hierarchy in the assignment of times and rooms as well as the PEF. And again, we want to emphasize that the folks who are reviewing these like to see a diversity of speakers. And again, diversity can mean a lot of different things. It can mean ethnicity, gender, geographic, career path, type of, where the person works, whether it's with industry, academia, extension, whatever. So we'd just like to see the full breadth of the membership being covered wherever possible. It's very important that the proposals be complete and that all the sections, with the objective, the goal, the speaker list, the topic, how it relates to the meeting theme, all of those are very important. So you want to make sure that your proposal is as complete as possible. Also, if you're going to include virtual presentations, bear in mind that virtual presentations will be pre-recorded and not live streamed. And so if a symposium is going to have, say, half of the presentations be virtual, just keep in mind that those are going to be pre-recorded and they'll be put together as a block in the symposium that'll be available for viewing anytime after the meeting starts. And so you'll have a block of speakers doing live presentations in a continuous manner, and then the pre-recorded virtual presentations as part of the symposium. Next slide, please. So right now we are still planning on doing an in-person live meeting in Denver in October, November. COVID may have other ideas. But right now we are planning on an in-person meeting. However, there's a possibility that as time goes on and we get closer to the date, we may have to reconsider that. So if that happens, if we end up going from a in-person or a hybrid meeting to an all virtual meeting, Symposium organizers will be asked to update their proposal to include how they're going to deal with the engagement piece in a virtual space, and also just to make sure that the speakers, you'll want to reconfirm your speaker participation, just to make sure that the folks who agreed before to an in-person or a hybrid meeting are okay with still participating in an all virtual space. And also, all virtual and remote presenters are required to register for the meeting. And so it doesn't matter whether you're going to be there in person or just do a virtual, you still have to register for the meeting. And that's it. And at this time, we're open to questions.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that way we can see each other. If anybody has any questions for us, you can enter them in the chat. You can turn your camera on and unmute yourself. I'd like to hear from you. Go for it, Patricia.
So my question is, maybe I'm a little bit lost, but do we have all this information in available? So because I see that some of those details I didn't put in my symposium this year, and I'm like, oh, it would be so easy. Do you have a guideline for that? And maybe I don't know where they are somewhere.
Becky, you want to take that one?
I know that on the FAQs for session submissions that we address like what information, like generally speaking, but the specifics that we've laid out here, we have not put them anywhere. So I think that's probably the next step after organizing this is to put together like the best practices
Yeah, so for example, the form asks that you list proposed speakers, but it doesn't really say what sort of information we're looking for or people are looking for. And then when they come in, you can see that when you compare one proposal that has a list of speakers and topics and titles, that looks very favorable compared to one where they just have a long list of potential speakers but no topics. So
I also wanted to add, Patty, the information actually is in the ESA. It's just that it has to be kind of you have to look for it. It is not assembled as a presentation as we did today. This is the first webinar. That the need for that webinar came because there was not a one single place where you can go. The information on the different categories, obviously, that is in the ESA website. The information on that will make it strong, believe it or not, that is present when you make the submission. The submission process is asking you what is, please write about your presenters. What steps did you take in order to ensure diversity in your presenters? How do these align with the themes of the meeting? So it is in that format, kind of hidden, but it is in there. It's just that you are correct. I mean, it is not until you access that submission website that you realize they're asking all these questions, and you probably didn't have a chance to think about those as you had in advance. But yeah, as Becky said, probably there will be a need now to put it in a unified place about strong goals, objectives, and but all of that is in the submission page. It's just that it's not in a unified website. Yeah.
Thank you, though. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I have a question about the meeting. So it looks like you guys are planning to do a hybrid, if I understood well. So would the registration fees be different for the people who are able to attend the in-person meeting versus the ones that decide to go virtual?
Yeah, that's a great question, Flora. Thanks for asking that. We do have different pricing. So the people who are either presenting virtually only or attending virtually only, there is a much lower registration fee for them than for those who are attending in person. We will have that information. I believe we'll have it posted in early March to give you a better sense as you're recruiting your speakers of what those fees are going to be. I don't know that they've been announced just yet though, but yes, virtual speakers will be charged a lower registration rate.
Thank you.
And one additional point that we wanted to make is as Chris mentioned, we're still going to be operating as if this is a physical, presential meeting made of physical presentations or hybrid presentations. We're not. We do that because we still want to encourage that sense of community, the networking, the interaction. We acknowledge that last year full virtual meeting was a tremendous success, but at the same time we would like to at least at this point avoid just going virtual just because we want maybe a lower rate or because we don't want to travel. I mean, there will be situations like that. I mean, some people might not feel as safe given the current pandemic, and as Chris rightfully said, COVID might have other plans. There will be enough information coming with enough time for all the speakers to prepare for that in the eventual case that we decide to go virtual. But as of now, yes, there will be some price adjustment for those who give their presentation virtually. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
And there'll be plenty of warning if we end up going all virtual, because ESA has commitments with the hotel and with committed contracts that we can only pull out a certain amount of time away from the meeting date. So there'll be lots of time for all of us to make adjustments to a virtual meeting if we need to.
Yeah, and I do remember there was a similar question in another meeting that we had before. Hybrid means obviously having presenters who are giving a presentation in that room, or other presenters who pre-recorded the presentation. I mean, we want to promote that if necessary, rather than every presenter just sending their pre-recorded presentation and not going to the ESA meeting, unless obviously the circumstances mandate. But yes, the reason for that because of those commitments that we have as far as filling out the hotels and paying our bills. Yeah.
Thank you. It's just good to know because like when I email people asking if they want to speak in a symposium, then it's good to let them know that those options are available.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. And I did have the same question when I was preparing for a symposium, organizing a symposium, mainly with international speakers that they might not be on the same track of vaccinations, and they might have some impediments to travel to the US. So given those circumstances, and if it is a speaker that you definitely need, yeah, there could be some exceptions on that. We don't want to lose a wonderful presentation just because that person cannot participate. But yeah, it is always a good idea, and we should mention this, it's also always a good idea to kind of inquire with the speakers, that possibility. And I saw some of the submissions that we received already. Some people are making allusion to that. They say, everybody has agreed to be physical presenters, but they are also open to the idea of going virtual if needed. So getting an idea of that will be very beneficial.
I have another question that was not mentioned in the presentation. So how much time is allowed for each type of symposium? How many hours and how many speakers and how much time per speaker for each type of symposium?
You have a lot of flexibility in that area. Over the years, ESA has experimented with having fixed amount of time as per presentation. We're pretty much leaving that up to the organizers. And so if you chose to, you could have a symposium with a few speakers who have maybe up to 30 minutes or more, or you can have a whole bunch of them at 15. It's really up to the organizers what they want to do. You really can't go beyond 4 hours because of scheduling, a 4-hour continuous block. Now, of course, if some of those are pre-recorded, then that doesn't count against your 4 hours. But in terms of of live meeting time, 3 to 4 hours would be the norm, with 4 being the absolute maximum.
Yeah, and on the submission form itself, Fleur, just so you know, we have options for people to select 2, 3, or 4 hours. And if you, for example, if you apply for and get approved at a 3-hour symposium, and then you only end up having like 2.5 hours of content, that's fine. It's not a big deal. If you end up thinking you're going to have a little bit more, if you give us a heads up, that we can typically work that out too. As Chris mentioned, the 4 hours is max. But so you do have an option to tell us like what you're thinking. And then we found that somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes tends to be the sweet spot for invited presentations. But again, as Chris mentioned, there's a lot of latitude there and you can kind of pick whatever you want. So it's really up to you as the organizer to figure out what's going to make the most sense, both for your speakers and for your intended audience.
I even saw some presentations last year where there were, most speakers had, like, say, just as an example, 20 minutes. And there were a couple of speakers who we were given 30 minutes. So again, that is an option of the presenters. You don't have to put everybody on the same timetable unless you want to. But there might be some speakers, some invited renowned authorities who might want or probably deserve, given the topic, a little bit more time. And that is up to you. That is absolutely something that you can do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions that you all have for us? We have a couple more minutes scheduled. No? Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and end here. Thank you all for joining us. I hope this was helpful. If you do come up with any questions later on, you're like, oh, I wish I had asked that. You can always email any of the 3 who are presenting or myself. I'm pretty sure the entire world has my email address, banthony@nsoc.org or banthony @nsoc.org. So you can feel free to email me or any one of the program chairs if you come up with questions later. But thank you all for joining us. I really appreciate it, and hope you all have a, oh, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, this is our first time trying to do something like this. So if there's something that you'd like to see covered that we didn't get to, or something that you think more information on would have been helpful, just let us know so that next year the folks doing it can do a better job. So.
Yeah, thanks for that. All right. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Thank you.